Welcome. I'm Crystal Cotto Sullivan, wisdomologist and the host of Journey to Inner Practical Wisdom. In this episode of our Wisdomology book club, we will have a conversation about Becoming a Matriarch by Helen Knott. Before I bring on my co-book readers, I just want to read a little bit from the sleeve of the book. So just to give you an idea of where our conversation will kind of revolve around. Of course, we'll go off on tangents as well, but so woven into the pages are the themes of mourning, sobriety, through loss and generational dreaming. Becoming a matriarch is charted with poetic insights, sass, humor, and heart taking the reader over the rivers and mountains of Dane Da territory in northeastern British Columbia, along with cobbled streets of Antigua, Guatemala, and straight to the heart of what matriarchy truly means. This is a journey through pain on the way to becoming. So let me bring on everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome. Joanne, you're still on mute.
Okay,
Hello.
Good morning.
Okay, great. So here we are with another book, and welcome. So this particular book, again, I'm not sure, I'm just going to hold it up for the YouTube people, but it's called Becoming a Matriarch by Helen Knott. And when I was in Ottawa in January, I was reading a variety of books, but my daughter said, well, maybe you might like this book. And of course, Becoming a Matriarch just made sense to me in terms of age. And, you know, being the oldest in my family and kind of the organizer and whatnot, I thought, okay, well, I'll recommend it. And here we are. We are beginning. We are talking about this book today. So, and the other part of it for me was also just wanting to continue to learn more about the indigenous people of North America and the world, but specifically being in Canada and wanting to learn more about that as well. So, okay, so maybe someone could start and just talk about your own experience with the book, and then I'll come back and talk more about mine.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Jillian.
well, when you first mentioned the book, I think the matriarch, I thought, oh, this is great. You know, like you said, just that we're at a certain age in our lives, and you know, we're here as older, wise women. We're here to help other people learn about life through our own experience. But actually, I think that's a mentor, and I had a mentor a few years ago with an older woman, and she taught me a lot about life, and that's what I thought this was about. But having read the book, I realized I don't want to be a matriarch because she gave up a lot of herself for other people, and surprisingly, you know, she stood up when her mother died and protected the men so they didn't have to deal with stuff. But in reality, what she had done, she had protected them from reality, really. I mean, you always think of men being strong, but really, you know, women are very strong and we're really not recognized for it at all.
Yeah, I think that is interesting you say that, Jillian, because as I read it as well, I was also a bit taken aback and thought, is this matriarchy? And you know, I lived in Africa for a while, and matriarchy is quite strong. Like some of the tribes are matriarchal in terms of who really has a say. And so I thought, oh, okay, this will be about that. But it was interesting for me because it was she found herself through she kind of broke through the what the I guess the what's the word I want? I guess maybe a definition of matriarchy that has become not so helpful. And so, but she broke through it, which I thought was pretty amazing that she didn't just say, okay, I am the matriarch now, which sometimes we become something and we don't really think about, well, what does that mean? You know, it's like becoming a parent the first time, and it's like, well, what does that mean? It's like not having a clue. And I think it really made me think about, well, what does that mean to be a matriarch? So I think that it certainly wasn't, like with you, Jillian, it wasn't what I expected,
Mhm.
but it made me think more deeply about what matriarchy really is in a healthy way, as opposed to just a title or something that is okay. This is the way we do matriarchy. It's like parenting. There isn't just one way,
Yeah.
and it's fitting our own history and life into what matriarchy is, that then helps us to become true matriarchs.
Yeah, it seems to
Mhm.
me that the word matriarch, it brings to mind the word patriarchy, and patriarchy is, about control and being the head and things like that. So, thinking about how Helen did, like redefining what matriarchy is and what it can be. And I wonder too if it might be helpful to even change the word matriarchy into something more palatable for today. Like, I don't want to be in control of anybody. I have to be in control of my own life. I prefer to be a listening board, someone who sits with someone, to just listen. And, if they want advice, then yes, ask me for it. But then, but also to ask questions so people can figure out things on their own. I mean, that's one of the things I learned when I was a Stephen minister, and that was to help people in crisis. And we were trained to not tell people what to do, but to ask the right questions so they would be able to figure out what they wanted to do on their own. And I think that's really important. So to me, like matriarch, it would be more a guide, a listener, a sounding board, but not somebody who's in control.
And it's interesting you say that, because I'm just looking up the meaning of matriarch. And so it's a woman who rules or dominates a family group or state, which isn't necessarily a definition that I want to be
Hmm.
defined as.
No.
So, and I think it's interesting that of course, we have patriarch, which is the same. The patriarch is the man who controls and rules the family. So
Hmm.
it would be just taking on that role ourselves, which really, I don't really want to control or
Hmm.
rule over the family.
Mhm.
So interesting that, what word can we use? I mean, I think wise woman is a good word.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
I do like that. But yeah, interesting. Joanne, what do you think?
Well, just to touch on that, about matriarch, I never looked at the word matriarch as being a controlling word. I looked at I guess I never looked up the definition, but I looked at matriarchal as being the holder or the protector of the life-giving rituals of a family or a group, that the one who held the value or of certain customs and so on that were going to be nurturing and healthy for people. That's what I thought a matriarch was. And I also, as Jillian said, I was really fortunate to have had a number of older, wise women in my life. And uh, they were like that. They didn't tell anybody what to do. They were good at they were great listeners, and they were great asking questions and letting you figure it out. So for me, but I wasn't really expecting, I wasn't even really looking for a how-to book, because I I figured it out what I wanted, how I want to be as a matriarch in my family. And years ago, um, actually, I think it was in 1986, at Christmas time, I wrote a poem about what it means to be part of a family. and I used the symbol of the Inukchuk on it, and meaning that these little figures sat in barren lands and they were directional guideposts, and that I pictured our family members as that. And so at Christmas, we each have a little Inukchuk and we bring them together when we get the family circle back together. And so as each of the grandchildren were born, they got one and their name was added to the list.
Cool.
And that's how I pictured Matriarch, that's what I wanted for my family. And so, but overall, the book was really interesting. And I don't know if you want me to go at this point into the things that struck me about it.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, great.
I guess I really felt for her because I felt that she was suffering generational trauma and being expected. She thought that her role as matriarch was to carry these burdens and carry these wounds for other people and so she really wasn't able to allow herself to feel and express her feelings. And these were some of the quotes that jumped out at me. She said, I come from a long line of women who couldn't afford endless miles of emotions, so they buried it. Little wonder that addiction is great in the culture. And but also she said, in the end, it all comes down to the small moments. And that really struck me because I thought, isn't that life? Really, that's what life is it's a collection of small moments. And then she said, in trying to figure out where her role was, that the world will always take what you're willing to give. And how many people give, and they're so depleted. And she said, I choose me. And she said, I'm a woman now, and I must learn to stand on my own. And her journey, as you pointed out, was painful. She said, I was searching for pearls hidden in a bush full of blood-drawing thorns. But she was willing to do that in order to, as you said, break through. And you know, that's, I guess, why many times we don't dig far enough, because we don't want to deal with the thorns to get to the other side. So I found some good lessons there. And then she also said, I found permission to take care of myself. And this dealing with grief, this resonated with me because I've seen this play out. And it said, if I give this grief away, it means I didn't love them as much as I thought I did. And so that push and pull of holding the grief and replaying the grief, and this pull to want to move on and to continue living. But then does that mean if I move on and I actually experience joy and happiness, does that mean I really didn't love them as much as I thought I did? And so it's a great question. It's a great question to ponder. And the other one was about the men and how we shielded them from everything. And by doing so, we crippled their ability to walk into reality. And protecting the men from the harsh emotional realities of our family. And then what happens is the northern boys and men who still feel their feelings with their fists. They can't process their feelings, and so it turns into anger when they're not happy.
You know, I don't think it's just Indigenous women who are in this kind of role, who somehow take on the role of taking on everybody else's problems and trying to be strong. And you know, when Death came to visit her, it said, "Who asked you to do this?" And nobody did. And yet women tend to do it. So what is happening there? Is it the society we live in? Is it our family? not willing to do some of these things. And so we take up the slack. I mean, I find it really interesting that this is a common theme with women.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well,
So what do you think is happening?
I think part of it, and it's in that chapter where she has that conversation with death, it's that as women, we often try to fit into a role. And so
Mm,
she was trying to fit into this role of a matriarch. And he asks her the question, well, who are you? And she said, well, I don't know, because she became the role. And I think often as women, that's what happens. We're expected to be a certain way, to speak a certain way, to act a certain way, whatever. But is that really us? And so it's really, to me, to become a true matriarch, it's really getting to know, who am I? And then rather than fitting into a role of controlling or power, it's to become what I believe to be, a nurturing, wise, empowered woman. And he asked her the question, "Are you supposed to be a matriarch?" Well, who says she's supposed to be a matriarch? It's the expectation is external as opposed to, I choose to be a matriarch. I
mm-hmm.
choose to be the wise person, the nurturing person, the person with wisdom to love and lead my family. But I choose it. And for her, it was imposed. It was like the expectation was, grandma is gone, mama is gone, I am the matriarch. But she didn't know how to do it. It was
It's interesting. I just heard Jane Fonda. She was talking, and she said, and when we think of Jane Fonda, we think of a very strong woman who gets things done. But she said that whoever she was married to, she became the person that man wanted her to be.
huh,
Isn't that amazing?
well,
And then even someone like Jane Fonda would be in that position. Like, little girls are brought up to do that. And we tiptoe around the men of our lives, waiting, watching their moods and, trying to fit in and to be accepted. But one of the things that really struck me, that you said about this book, which was a very powerful statement, is take up space. Take up
mhm,
space. Like as women, we're afraid to speak out. We're afraid to cry, to grieve, to yell, to kick and scream, because it doesn't look very feminine, very ladylike, and it seems really inappropriate. Like I've been in situations where I've been out with people and somebody said something unkind, and I've let it pass because I don't want to make a scene.
mhm,
I remember once and this is really interesting, I was taking a course and there was this one man in the group who kept saying inappropriate things to me. And because I didn't want to make a scene in front of everybody, people thought that there was something going on between us. And one of the women in the group said to me, "By you not saying anything, you're giving the idea to other people that this is okay and that something is going on.
mhm,
So lesson learned,
mhm,
don't mess with me because I'm
mhm,
not interested. So that's interesting, like he was out of line and yet I was afraid to make a scene.
mhm, mhm,
Hmm.
Well, on that note about why would women pick this up, I guess the way I look at that is that I think women are by nature fairly intuitive, and we we pick up, we see things, we sense things.
mhm,
And the reason we get into that adaptive mode is that we don't have clear boundaries. We may see something, but it's not ours to pick up. It's not ours to deal with. It's other people. They need to deal with their own thing.
I also
And
I also think, Joanne, we don't trust our intuition. And then that gets us into trouble. We're
mhm,
intuitive, and yet we're taught not to trust that intuition.
not anymore.
Not, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've learned to trust it, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
how do we nurture that in younger women and help women who don't trust their intuition to really begin to trust it. So when you're feeling uncomfortable, it's like, trust that. It's like, there's something wrong in this situation. I need to either speak up, leave, or tell the guy to fuck off, or whatever it is that we're supposed to do. So I think that it's really trusting ourselves, that we're taught not to trust ourselves. Many
Yes, I remember years ago, a friend of mine always very intuitively knew if something was wrong. Sometimes I didn't even know that something was wrong until I started talking about it. But sometimes when I would tell her something, I would feel like there was something wrong with my feeling. And she would always say to me, you feel what you feel. I mean, there's no right or wrong to it. You feel what you feel. And I think that was a really important lesson for me, that it's okay. It doesn't have to be like someone else. And somebody might not agree with it, or, someone would say, well, I don't feel that way. Well, we're talking about me right now. We're not talking about you. So I guess that's another way to take up space. Give yourself permission to feel what you feel. It's okay.
Yeah, you feel what you feel, and then you get to decide what
Mm-hmm.
action you want to take or not take out of that, but to
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge the feeling and then make the decision as to how you want to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
One of
Exactly.
the things from that death conversation that really struck me around all of this is, Death says to her, it sounds like you're taking control of your destiny instead of allowing purpose to show up in your life. So I think that's related a little bit to our intuition, because we need to pause and think, well, what is my purpose, as opposed to it being imposed. Again, back to that external imposition of, we expect you to be like this, when in fact maybe that's not our role, maybe that's not our purpose in life or our path, and needing to then
Yeah,
show up.
often we don't know though, do we? We don't know what our purpose is. We, as women, we don't know what we want. I mean, that's not true of all women, of course, but yeah, some women do not know what they want because they've been so busy worrying about what everybody else wants and trying to fill their needs. Maybe they think that's their purpose, to fill everyone else's needs, and when they don't have it, who am I? Who am I without that? Again, talking about Helen, when Death was talking to her, you know, I think he asked her, like, who are you if you're not a matriarch? Who are you if you're not a writer? So, oh my God, who am I? You feel like, well, am I nobody if I don't have these things? The question becomes, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I without these things?
It's about self-awareness and knowing who I am, and what makes me tick, and then also how I interact with the world around me. Like, a lot of people just act without being aware of what is actually going on around me, how I'm impacting others, and how they're impacting me, and needing to
Mm-hmm.
pause and say, okay, that didn't go well. What really happened there? As opposed to feeling bad about it. It's just, pay attention. It's about paying attention to what's happening. So, it's the purpose. It's like pausing and asking questions, and not just going through the motions and doing what others expect us to do.
Mm.
As you know, it's all, for me, it's always about awareness. It's about paying attention to, what is going on inside and out. So,
That's really good. I like that.
And being
Awareness.
curious
and
rather
being
than
curious.
judgmental.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's about curiosity. It's like,
Yeah.
what's really going on here, as opposed to, oh my God, I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be feeling like that, or, oh, I can't respond like that. Well, isn't that interesting that I'm feeling like this right now? Like,
Mm.
what is that about? And then, spending some time looking at that and responding to it. So, and I think in the book, she really comes to that point. She kind of dips in and out of it throughout the book. And I think ultimately there's a self-awareness about, not only she knows there's intergenerational trauma, but in her journey, she also realizes there's intergenerational joy, and that she needs to hold on to that as well. And I think that, I think telling her story was part of her catharsis, in terms of of becoming aware of her purpose, and that she can have her own definition of matriarchy, of being a leader, a wise woman in her family.
Right. So when we're coming back to the title, Becoming a Matriarch, it's perhaps a little misleading because it might be better for her to have said how I become, how I determine what a matriarch is, or something like that, a little more defined, because she didn't like the definition. I mean, did she really become a matriarch at the end of it?
I think
Or
so.
does she redefine matriarchy? Maybe that would be a better title, Redefining Matriarchy.
I don't think she's redefining it. I think she is living it through her pain, and she's come out the other side. It's like she's birthed herself in a new way, and she has become a matriarch. And when you become something, you're on a journey. So she's telling us about the journey of how she became a matriarch. Because initially, sorry, go ahead.
What's the subtitle of the book? I don't
A
have it in
memoir.
front of me.
It just says a memoir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it just says a memoir. So I think the title is good because it's really about her journey and how she becomes a matriarch. I think a
But I thought she
definition would
turned
be
away from that, though, because she didn't like the definition. She didn't want to be everything for everybody else.
that's because she was taking on their understanding of matriarch, I think. And it was only when she had that conversation with death that she realized she could only become a matriarch if she was true to herself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what I got out of it. It's that she became a matriarch not in the way that she thought she should be, but in the way that her soul said, this is what it is to be a matriarch. She was living out the external matriarch, but she wasn't in touch with her own soul, I don't think. Until the ending, I think that she finally got there.
It's interesting she still wanted to be one after, she came to realize what that meant for her family, her ancestors, people before her.
But that's how we change history.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That's how we change history, and that's how we change
Yeah, that's true.
families.
There was certainly a pattern.
Yeah, and she was breaking the pattern.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of like with in abusive relationships, like I came from a difficult, family, and I broke the cycle. I made that choice, so not consciously. I don't know what happened there, but I didn't like what I was saying, and when I got married, I didn't want to repeat that, and yet other people do. So yeah, we do have a choice.
We do.
Maybe it was about awareness. I was aware that there was something better.
The last thing I wanted to say before we end is that I thought of that book that you told me about, Joanne, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, and the rituals about grieving, because throughout the book, there's so many rituals that she engages in to help her to clear the trauma and to clear the pain. And I thought, oh yeah, ritual is just so important in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
Okay, well, once again, great conversation. And thank you both. And thank you to our listeners. And I hope we've piqued your curiosity, even if you just read a review of the book or this conversation, but maybe you'll want to read it, and hope you will enjoy it. And until next time, happy reading. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.